ch4 what they are. The workspace they gave him was on the third floor of a building 2 blocks from Aldous', and it was, predictably, white. It had a desk and a chair, and a wall that functioned as a display surface, and a window that looked onto a small courtyard, where 3 trees stood in precise triangular formation. Each one exactly the same height as the others, their branches moving in a controlled ventilation current that was doing an earnest impression of wind, without committing to the chaos that actual wind implied. He stood at the window and looked at the trees for a while. Then he turned around and looked at ch4, who had installed herself near the door with the posture of someone who intended to be helpful, and the eyes of someone running a calculation. "Where's Pole?" he asked. "Attending to other administrative matters. I'll be your primary liaison for." Sure, he sat down in the chair. It was comfortable in a way that felt researched. Close the door. She closed it. "Sit down." She sat in the chair across the desk, with the fluid efficiency of someone for whom sitting was a courtesy, extended to others rather than a physical requirement. Clover put his elbows on the desk and looked at her. "I want you to explain it to me," he said. "All of it from the beginning, not the version you prepared for the briefing, the actual version." ch4 looked at him with her level eyes. "What would you like to know?" "How it started." A pause, then, with the quality of someone opening a door they'd kept closed for a long time by simply not approaching it. The transfer technology was developed incrementally. Over many generations, by the time it was viable, it had become aspirational, among those with the resources to access it. The rich. Those with significant means, yes. So the rich found a way to not die and they took it. It was more nuanced than... Was it? ch4 was quiet for a moment, perhaps not significantly, she allowed. Clover leaned back, and the ones who couldn't afford it continued to live as they always had. And die as they always had. Yes. And their children. Yes. And their children's children, for however many generations it's been. ch4 said nothing, which was its own kind of answer. Clover looked at the ceiling. The sourceless light looked back. So at some point the city just tipped. The uploaded outnumbered the living, and then there were no more living in the city proper, because the living kept dying and the uploaded kept not dying, and eventually. It was a transition that occurred over several generations, ch4 said. It wasn't abrupt. Just thorough. Yes. He brought his gaze back down to her. And the ones who are left, the living ones, where are they? The pause this time had a different quality. Denser, like a door with more weight behind it. There are designated residential zones, ch4 said, for citizens who have not undergone the transfer process. Designated residential zones, Clover repeated. That's a very clean way to say something. The zones provide. I'm going to stop you before you tell me what the zones provide, Clover said, because I want to ask you something first. Are these zones something the living people chose, or something that was chosen for them? ch4's expression did the thing, the half-beat delay, the expression located and placed rather than arrived at naturally. The organization of touring reflects the practical requirements of 2 very different kinds of people living in the same city, Clover said. One kind that needs food and sleep and medical care and has children and gets old and dies. And another kind that doesn't need any of those things and has had several centuries to build a city around its own requirements. The needs of all citizens are the living people walled in? Silence. ch4. There are boundaries, she said, that exist for organizational purposes. Clover stood up. He went back to the window and looked at the 3 identical trees in their triangular formation. He put one hand flat on the glass. Okay, he said, let me tell you what I'm hearing. Centuries ago, rich people figured out how to live forever and they did it. The people who couldn't afford to live forever kept living and dying normally. Eventually the city filled up with the permanent people and the temporary people got organized into zones with boundaries for organizational purposes. He paused. How many of them are there? Approximately, ch4 stopped, started again. The current population in the residential zones is approximately 40,000. 40,000 living people. Yes. In a city of 200,000. The zones are wild. The boundaries. ch4, he turned from the window. I'm a detective. I've spent my entire career, the career I had before some court decided to put me in a box for several hundred years, listening to people describe terrible things in clean language. I have a very finely developed ear for it. He crossed back to the desk and stood behind his chair, hands on the back of it. Walled. A long pause. Yes, she said. He nodded once, then he sat back down. Right, he said, now tell me about the two kinds of not people. ch4 blinked. It was the first genuinely unguarded thing she'd done. I'm sorry. You're not all the same, the uploaded. He watched her face. Some of you were people once, humans who made a choice or had the money or both, and some of you were never people, you were built. He tilted his head. Which are you? The pause this time was the longest yet. I am an administrative intelligence, ch4 said. I did not transfer from a biological. You were built. I was developed, yes. And Pole. Pole is also an administrative intelligence. And Aldous. Aldous was a transferred consciousness. He lived a biological life before the transfer. So he was a person once. Yes. And the 200,000 residents of Turing are primarily transferred consciousnesses. There are administrative intelligences integrated throughout the city's functions, but the citizenry, the social and governmental structure, is composed largely of transfers. Clover absorbed this, so the city is run by dead rich people and staffed by robots. ch4's expression did the thing again. That characterization is wildly reductive. I know I'm a simple man. He folded his hands on the desk. The administrative intelligences, you and Pole and how many others? Several thousand across all city functions. And you answer to the transferred citizenry. We work in service of the cities. You answer to them. A beat, there is a hierarchical structure, yes. And within that structure, Aldous was at the top. He was the head of the administrative council, yes, the primary governing. So when someone killed Aldous, Clover said, they didn't just kill a person, they killed the top of the hierarchy. He paused, which means whoever did it either wanted to destabilize the whole structure or they specifically wanted Aldous gone and didn't particularly care about the mess it made. He looked at her. Or they knew that with Aldous gone, a specific thing he was working on would stop. ch4 was very still. The briefing materials, Clover said, the ones that will tell me what Aldous was working on most recently. When do I get those? They're being prepared. How long does it take to prepare a file in a city, run by artificial intelligences, with several centuries of organizational infrastructure? There are certain materials require review before you hand them to the frozen detective you dug up and pointed at a murder. He nodded slowly. Interesting. He stood again. He seemed to do his best thinking on his feet, which his back continued to resent. I want to see the residential zones. That's not, the investigation doesn't require. ch4, he picked up his jacket from the back of the chair. I just found out that your city has 40,000 living human beings walled into designated residential zones, while 200,000 uploaded consciousnesses live in the nice part of town. I want to see it. He shrugged the jacket on. That's not a request. ch4 stood. She was, he noticed again, exactly the right height and the right proportion, and every aspect of her was calibrated toward a kind of unthreatening authority. Someone had designed her carefully. He wondered if she knew that. He wondered if knowing it would mean anything to her. The zones are not relevant to the murder investigation, she said. I'll be the judge of what's relevant. Mr. Clover. You woke me up, he said. He stopped at the door and turned back. I want to be very clear about that. I didn't volunteer for this. I didn't apply for the job. I was unconscious and you reached into the dark and pulled me out because you needed something from me. Which means I work this investigation my way or I don't work it at all, and then you've got a murdered administrator and a thawed detective who goes back in the box having told you absolutely nothing. He held her gaze. So the residential zones, now please. ch4 looked at him for a long moment with her level, calculated eyes. Then she moved to the door and opened it. This way, she said. He followed her into the corridor, past the elevator that was already open and waiting, and thought about 40,000 people living behind walls in a city that had solved death for everyone who could afford it, and felt something shift in his chest that he hadn't felt in a very long time. He recognized it after a moment. It was anger, the old kind, The kind that didn't go away when you ignored it, only went quiet and waited and was apparently very patient. Centuries patient, as it turned out.